According to a 2021 Special Forces class data leak, the selection rate was 56%, implying a 44% attrition rate. For enlisted soldiers, the average combined attrition rate for SFAS and the SFQC is 77%. For officers, the average combined attrition rate is 64%. In a specific November 2021 SFAS class, only 44% overall were selected, meaning that 56% didn't earn the coveted Green Beret. Based on this leaked report, 17% failed due to physical performance issues, 24% failed due to land navigation, 14% failed due to peer review, meaning you can be voted off by your peers for not being a team player and working well with others. 6% voluntarily withdrew or simply quit. 2% were medically withdrawn due to illness or injury. It's important to note that these statistics don't include candidates who drop out before reaching SFAS, such as those who fail during Infantry OSUT, airborne school, or don't make it to day one of SFAS. In summary, the current dropout and failure rate for Special Forces candidates is quite high, ranging from about 50-70% for SFAS alone, and increasing to around 64-77% when including the full qualification course. The exact rates can vary by class and year, but consistently show that a significant majority of candidates do not successfully complete the selection and qualification process. Thinking about joining the ranks? Our guests will also share insights on eligibility, the recruitment process, and what it takes to be part of this elite brotherhood. For those aspiring to join the ranks of the elite, courageous, and noble soldiers, I look forward to seeing you rise to the occasion and achieve greatness. Welcome to the Recruiting Ain't Easy podcast.
So as you can see, possibly earning your Green Beret when going Special Forces is by no means going to be an easy task. It is going to be daunting, the most challenging, and the most rewarding experience one may go through when embarking upon that journey to possibly go Special Forces. But lucky for you, joining me today on the pod are two Colorado Army National Guard Special Forces recruiters who are going to share with you some of the eligibility and commonly asked questions when going Special Forces and some of the things that they deal with as recruiters. So heed their advice and their tips as much as they possibly can without breaking any NDAs, non-disclosures, right? And OPSEC. So for the sake of this pod, Nick is his alias name for his protection and for OPSEC reasons. He is still actively serving as an 18 Bravo Weapons Sergeant with the 19th Group Special Forces in the Colorado Army National Guard. He's also formerly an 11 Bravo Infantry soldier, to include Sergeant First Class Klaus, who was also formerly an 11 Bravo Infantry soldier, who is currently now serving as a 79 Tango Recruiting and Retention NCO for the Colorado Army National Guard, specifically for the Special Forces 19th Group in Colorado. So without further ado, I appreciate you guys joining. Their links are going to be down below to their 19th Group Instagram page and their point of contact. So if you got any questions, feel free to reach out to them directly. Without further ado, let's get started. Welcome, Sergeant First Class Faust, and thank you, Nick, for joining us.
Let's go. Thanks for having us, man.
Yep, thanks for having us.
I appreciate you guys coming on here. This is awesome. This is a real treat for my viewers. All right, so Sergeant First Class Klaus, for the Army National Guard Special Forces, what are some of the basic requirements and any possible exceptions to those rules, like age, citizenship, GT line score, so on and so forth?
Yeah, great question. Basic requirements for 18 X-ray, which is our standard non-prior service contract, never been in the military before, does apply to some prior service candidates as well. It is going to be 20 years of age at time to ship to initial active duty training. They now can be a green card holder, so that's a temporary requirement that's been changed from being a citizen to allowing a green card holder to enter in as an 18 X-ray. Ability to hold a secret clearance, generally medically qualified. That's the basic requirements. There's some stuff that allows for waivers in that process.
Yeah, one of my soldiers recently was offered SF, but his GT line score wasn't high enough. And I thought that was pretty awesome that they're bending these rules a little bit. Do you have any idea to why they're doing it? Like, are you guys critically low, or you have a shortage of SF applicants?
I don't think now, I don't think we have a shortage of applicants. I think in general, Big force, right, is they're looking at end strength coming through the pipeline, and then who's at the teams, and might be allowing for a shift there in the GT score. The only shift in GT score that I've seen is from the prior service guys. So if you are in service or you're coming back in and you're going into the 18 series guy, the reduction is to a 100 GT score instead of the 110. So that's for those prior service guys. And for those guys, I mean, they've already been through service, they've been through some training, they've been successful in other ways. And that, I would imagine, would be where they would allow some flexibility with that general technical score.
SFRE, what is it exactly? And is that required prior to signing for this option, if otherwise eligible for Special Forces?
That's a good question. So SFRE is going to be for guys that are they're currently in service, or a lot of guys that we might put in might be on a Tri-1 or a 1-year contract, which allows them to go to SFAS and try to get selected and do follow-up training. So the SFRE is the National Guard's way to screen those soldiers that want to go to SFAS and make sure that they're physically ready, demonstrate leadership potential, mental capacity and fortitude to be able to be successful at SFAS. The 18 X-ray contract does not have a contractual obligation to attend an SFRE. They don't have to go to an SFRE to earn that contract. However, the guys that are in service or on those Tri-1s have to show their potential to get selected before they'll get an SFAS date. Nick is also a SWID cadre, so he is one of the guys that will be assessing those candidates for their potential.
Yeah, it's essentially everything Klaus said. It's more or less a gut check before we send them out to where they're going, and it's a pretty. We made some pretty recent adjustments to the overall curriculum because of the adjustments that they made over at selection. But yeah, it's essentially it's a gut check, not only physically but mentally, to see if they have what it takes to even make it past not only the initial physical gates, but all the, I guess we can call it mental gates as well. Not just if you have the mental toughness, but leadership, critical thinking skills, etc.
It's a gut check for sure, watching those guys go through the process.
Oh, I bet. I'm sure it's pretty interesting to see the different types of people that go through the program. Is it like that typical Hollywood image of what a soldier looks like Jack for no reason kind of guys, or do you see some average looking folks going through the program as well?
It honestly takes all kinds. And I'm sure we'll get to it later, but when I was going through, the dudes who are absolutely jacked for no reason, they kind of have a hard time, especially when the caloric deficit is added into the mix. So usually afterwards, that's when you guys see dudes sort of put on the on muscle, because selection is like the first. It's the first of many steps, and the bigger you are, and the bigger you decide you make yourself, it's kind of a disadvantage because they are going to apply some stressors, and caloric deficit is definitely one of them.
Yeah, I would assume so, for sure.
Yeah.
Physically, I think you're going to see all kinds of dudes coming through for sure.
Dudes and dudettes. Yeah. So.
All right, perfect. So for your perfect applicant that has no issues, what does the typical timeline look from the processing for Special Forces, like signing a contract, to completing all the necessary training, and how long does that typically take for a candidate to complete all of the training involved?
That's a good question. I mean, there's two sides of that coin. I think what you're asking is total start from the time they contact our office to the time that they finish the Q course and don their Green Beret for the first time.
I guess from the moment they ship out to basic training, I guess, because basic is 10 weeks, and then all the other ones, like is it like 9 months long, 12 months long?
Yeah, great question. So the basic training, so all 18 X-ray candidates are going to go through Infantry OSUT, one station unit training, which will involve, it's 9 weeks and a couple days worth of change of basic training, followed by 11 Bravo AIT, which is now it takes them out to 20 weeks. So it's 11 weeks total.
That was 24.
It's for 11 Charlie, I think it's 20. I think it's 22 weeks for 11 Charlie. 11 Bravo, I believe, is 20 weeks of total initial active duty training. Well, when I went through 11 Bravo OSUT, it was 15 weeks, so they upped that.
Yeah.
Oh gosh, back in like 2016, I think is when they increased that.
Well after I.
Yeah, so they added on a bunch of additional training. Good stuff, right? Like important things for an infantry dude to know coming out of training. Weapon systems, tactics, more experience, more hands-on training in those aspects. So 21 weeks, I believe, is the 11 Charlie, but 11 Bravo is what they're going to be at in about 20 weeks and change. They go to airborne school. I'm getting fact-checked here by my counterpart. 22 weeks is the current training.
I was going to say that, but I didn't want to cut you off because I was going to say, like, my most recent 11 Bravos have been 22 weeks, but I don't know if it was different for SF soldiers.
No, great. It's a good call out. It's the same process. So 22 weeks right now for 11 Bravo OSUT.
Now, if one is prior service, 11 Bravo qualified, do they get to skip that part or they have to retrain?
Dude, I love that question. So what's actually funny is if I get an 11 Bravo qualified dude who's airborne qualified to come into the process, he can actually get an 18 X-ray contract. So he'll potentially go to basic training if he's been out of service for 5 years or more, and then go straight to SFAS. So that is best case scenario. You skip all the major parts of training and you go straight to SFAS, you collect your $200 and you go get selected. That was a Monopoly reference. I don't know if that's that landed or not, but yeah, that's
no.
Come on, man.
Sorry. I'm bald, man. It goes over real fast.
Clicked right over. Got it.
Oh.
Yeah, that's dad jokes all day long. So
I'll cut that part out. Don't worry.
Yeah, I know. It lands sometimes in my office and sometimes it doesn't. The 18 X-ray prior service guys, man, they got it good. They might have to go to basic training, but that is one of the best ways to go because they'll go straight to SFAS as part of their enlistment process instead of having to attend an SF.
So I know that, like, for recruiters who are in states that don't have special forces, a lot of times what we'll say to our applicants is to go infantry, get your feet wet, get qualified, because those skill sets will be great with land navigation and getting yourself physically ready for SF training and all that good stuff and tryouts. But so you're saying it really wouldn't make much of a difference to do that and just to go straight SF? Would that be a recommendation?
I think that's a great question. So Nick and myself, we talk to a lot of guys from different backgrounds. And, there's a lot of, most of our applicants are coming from out of state because Special Forces in the National Guard, number one, most people don't know Special Forces is even in the National Guard, but there's only certain states that have it. So if you're coming from a different state, you want to go SF, you have to come to the National Guard, the state that has it, in order to be able to enlist with an 18 series contract. The benefit of the training pipeline is it gets these guys ready for selection. You have 22 weeks of initial active duty training through the infantry OSUT to get yourself physically and mentally prepared, for what will be 28 days now of selection. And the additional time now for SFAS, there's an additional week that's tacked onto the front end where they're just going over land navigation. You're getting out on the Q course. You're getting down on the level here with the cadre to really learn where the pressure isn't on yet. Success will come with that preparation in the active duty training pipeline.
When recruiting for Special Forces, what are your biggest obstacles or challenges when finding the eligible and motivated applicants? And any tips for those who are looking to apply for SF?
So I think what you're asking is what kind of traits we want to see in this office from guys that want to go SF. Is that what you're asking?
So for the applicants that are eligible and that are motivated to go Special Forces, do you have any particular challenges or obstacles that are like trending for those types of applicants when processing?
I got you. Yeah, so it's nothing outside of the normal recruiting challenges. Our office processing, again, most guys are out of state. We've got a really streamlined process to guide those applicants without ever having them step foot in our physical office. They never even have to come to the state of Colorado to be able to get the contract that they want. So we really, me and Nick have really streamlined that process, and we have a really good way to take care of those dudes and get them everything that they want in a very quick and easy process. The hard fact about joining the military is that when guys want to join, there's some really great dudes out there that this is all they wanted for their entire life, right? That this is their dream, this is their goal. And then, like myself, where before I joined, I wasn't doing great things. I was living in Denver, getting into trouble, not doing the things that meant the most to society. And I wanted to change my life. I wanted to turn my life around. And just like me, my applicants have made mistakes in the past. So the hindrance ends up being just making sure that they're transparent with me in any kind of legal history that they might have had, tickets, citations, arrests, and then getting the paperwork that's necessary to support, showing that they're either qualified or getting them waivers to be able to join. Most of our applicants require some type of waiver. And out of that population, it's probably 50% of our waivers need a second waiver to be able to join, not just one. And so them being transparent with our office and getting their history correct to then get all the medical documentation, all the legal documentation to support an enlistment becomes really important.
So would you say that moral waivers are entertained in the SF community when applying, even though they're going for a top secret position? And what's the likelihood of those types of waivers getting approved?
Yeah, great question. Yeah, I mean, it's, again, everybody has a past. There's a reason why dudes are motivated to join and change their lives. That past becomes a pinnacle of experience for these dudes to come in. And so it is not frowned upon here to get a moral waiver for your past to come and join the SF community. And Nick can probably ascertain on that one as well. The likelihood of a moral waiver being approved is based off of meritorious reasons. So, hey, we understand you made a mistake. You did this on this time 5 years ago. You made a mistake. What have you done to improve yourself since that time? And then asking for solid letters of recommendation for people that know that individual on a professional and personal level really well, to write letters that somebody you will never meet will read and determine how you've improved yourself since that time. If you can do those things, you have a high chance of getting a waiver approved.
Right. That's pretty awesome, because I think it's like a recruiting-ism as recruiters, just in general, top secret clearance. Like if you need a moral waiver, like you're a done deal. Like that's not even an option. So I think that's pretty awesome that SF entertains moral waivers, even though it's a top secret clearance position.
Absolutely. And I think Nick might be able to speak a little bit more to like the clearance processes and.
Yeah, I mean, it's not even top secret. You need to be able to just pass at a secret level. There's only so many soldiers on the ODA that actually need a top secret clearance. I mean, any of us can actually apply for one down or during our career, but I mean, it's just a secret clearance. And like Sergeant Klaus said, everybody has something in their background, be it moral, be it medical, anything. I mean, it's my backstory with all my stuff. I didn't have moral stuff and my medical stuff when I was a kid. It was pretty tough, but with the clearance, I mean, it's just, again, it's the military can openly admit that people get in trouble. We're not. It's kind of suspicious stuff when you show up and you're like perfect candidate. And you're like, oh, this guy's CID. Yeah. So,
that's pretty fun.
Yeah. So, but yeah, it's not that bad. It's not. It's a hurdle, but it's nothing that someone can't climb over without our.
Yeah, I assumed that it was a top secret.
There's only certain compartmentalized jobs within ODAs that actually require you to have it, but I mean, everybody on, like, say, my level, we really just need it secret. If you start moving into more intelligence-related jobs or that is required for whatever mission you're on. They can do interims. They can do, you sign a bunch of NDAs. There's a ton of ways to kind of get around trying to go through the process of getting everyone qualified for top secret clearance, because the time it takes to actually get one, it would really kind of mess up the deployable nature of all the ODAs, especially with the new people coming in. So
now you kind of stole the thunder for this next question, but just so that it's crystal clear for the viewers, when going Special Forces, is the opportunity restricted to just in-state applicants, or only, or can like out-of-state applicants still apply, like just neighboring states, or can it be like anywhere in the country can apply for this opportunity?
Yeah, that's a great question. One that comes up a lot, again, because not every state has a SF battalion or company in the Guard in that state. It really comes down to, there is no restriction. Really comes down to where do you want to live and where do you want to serve, and the freedom associated with that choice. It's also the reason why we are so competitive, in my opinion, with the active component when it comes to 18 X-ray enlistments. We have guys that are coming from working with an active duty recruiter that learn about Guard SF and decide that they would rather serve in the Guard, be local, serve in a part-time capacity, build a civilian career, and still have all the training opportunities that come with working on a SF ODA, right? And having that secondary option and that freedom to be able to go out and do what things they want on the civilian side is huge. And so when it comes time to figuring out where you want to serve, it doesn't matter. When it comes to enlistment process, after you enlist, we will help pay for your travel. So these guys that are traveling from other states and they come down to Colorado for drill, there's a National Guard that can reimburse up to $500 in travel expenses for those dudes to fly into Colorado and back. So we have guys that are coming in from all across the country, and Colorado's sought after, right? There's a sense of adventure. There's a sense of experience in Colorado with the mountains, the outdoors, that just draws people in. There's a reason why people seek us out. We do have a lot of the neighboring states that they just are naturally going to call us up. Arizona, New Mexico are big ones for us. Idaho, Iowa, those are really big ones for me right now. Even up as far north as Michigan and Minnesota. They're going to seek out Colorado as an opportunity and a place to serve. But we have guys calling us from the East Coast that want that opportunity to serve with Colorado as well.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that, because that was actually going to be my next question. How, like, I heard there was like some reimbursement with travel costs. Now, as far as like where a place to stay, do you have like a BOQ or some sort of barracks inside the armory or something like that they can sleep at? Or how does that work if they're from out of state?
That's a great question. It pains me to say this because I spent so long in my infantry career when we got a home station drill, right, where we're doing paperwork, we're doing classroom stuff, and we're not going out to the field, where I spent my time sleeping on the floor in the armory, or my sleeping bag. I pull my sleep system here, and maybe you could draw out one of those really painfully tough cots to sleep on. And now looking at these guys being able to draw reimbursement for a hotel if their drill calls for the ability to sleep at a hotel. It's kind of hurts a little bit, but it's a great opportunity for that soldier. I think what you'll find most of the time is that for like home station drills, like a lot of guys will just opt to go hang out with a buddy, right? You'll go back, and then you've got a lot of guys that are local. They'll spend time here with their friends while they're in town, and usually get a couch to crash out on, and that gives them more opportunity to spend time with their friends while they're at drill status. If you are going to drill, the hope is you're out in the field, you're having fun, right? You're going to the range, you're shooting. It's not quite camping, right? But it's like, hey, I want to go out, I want to spend time at the range. I'm gonna sleep out in the dirt a little bit. That's the goal. Because then you get to go out and do the fun stuff, and then you don't have to worry about the amenities like a hotel or a couch to crash out on.
All right, good stuff, man. Appreciate the insights, because I get asked that all the time. If you have someone who meets the eligibility requirements, but for your inner intuition that's telling you that this person's not going to qualify, or maybe not good fit, or can't hack it, do you recommend them to go SF, or do you recommend them take a different route?
That's a great question. That is something that
like sometimes, like me as a recruiter, if someone wants to go infantry, and I'm like, dude, you're soft as hell. Like you're a mama's boy. Like maybe infantry is not the route you should be taking. You know what I mean? So that's why I brought that up.
I think in that way, I think that there is a distinct difference. And coming from the straight recruiting background, before I took over the SF recruiting section, I could have those conversations with a specific MOS counseling, right? Guy came in, 120 pounds, living on Fort Couch for most of his life. Infantry, hey man, I get it. Maybe not what you want to do with your first contract. Maybe change your MOS later on. The guys that seek out and the gals that seek out the SF contracts, it's a very specific type of personality that I found that generally get drawn into that type of processing and that type of a life. I would say in that processing, in my experience anyways, most of the guys that are not going to be a good fit for that community end up self-selecting themselves out of the contract, and they usually fall off somewhere in that processing before I even take them to MEPS. We've had a couple of conversations. They're asking questions that just kind of demonstrate that they're not really thinking of that life or that process. And it starts to become clear to them that this is not what they actually want. In the same turn, there's the other percentage of the population that, man, they're dedicated, man. They want it. They're there for whatever reason, whatever their why is, whatever their purpose in ceasing that contract. Those dudes will not fall off for whatever reason. They are committed to it. And, working with Nick in the office, we do have those conversations about those guys. And, the active duty training pipeline going through OSUT will correct a lot of things that we may see as deficiencies in those individuals that they need to change before they get to selection. And if there's specific feedback we can give them, we'll just talk to them directly. Having Nick in the office, we can circle back around with certain individuals that have gotten further along. They've shown they're committed. They're not falling off. They haven't self-selected to this point. And we can just give them direct feedback to say, hey, we just noticed a couple things here when we were working with you. There's some specific deficiencies that we'd really like to see you work on during your initial active duty training time. Because by the time they get to selection, if they haven't worked on those things, we might see them fall off during that selection process. And I think I speak for both Nick and myself that we don't enlist dudes just to enlist them. We want them to be successful. We want them to come out on the other side with their Green Beret as a fully qualified 18 series dude and come back and live that life. That is our ultimate goal in this office.
Yeah. Also, my response is also kind of multifaceted. So I'm not only trying to help people achieve their goals, but I'm also trying to make sure that they're going to be a good addition to regiment overall. And not to say that any dude who's wearing a green hat is perfect. But it really kind of shows like if they have that drive to maintain communication and they're asking good questions and they're honestly, and it's not just about themselves. So I've had quite a few married individuals, I personally like it when they are really diving in on making sure that they are going to have like their family affairs in order before they go, because nothing's going to screw with your readiness more than your home life being in shambles, much less like your personal life as well. So I just try to, I try to make sure that, that they got their heads in the right places. And then, just kind of talking to them. Like if the first thing they're asking me is, oh, hey, is there a bonus? I'm like, you're not really talking to me for the right reasons. It's a lot of, with me at least, a lot of the first impressions are kind of what drives the conversation. And it's, if they're really trying to play verbal jujitsu with me, especially with their backgrounds or like, hey, what can I get out of everything? I understand that, and I'm totally down for, if you're going to shine part of your life away, there are benefits that you're due, but like let's make sure we're not putting the cart before the horse, essentially. So, but that's kind of how I look at it, because I'm not only just vested in making sure that these guys are ready to go and give it a shot, but like making sure, like I said beforehand, they're a good addition to the regiment. And then and then there's some guys that, when it really comes to it, I remember when I went through it, the process I went through, I didn't have someone really to guide me. So, my first impression of people might not always be the right one, and they might prove me wrong. So it's really, if they're really dead set on trying it, even if I have a weird gut feeling that they might not be right now, especially a lot of these dudes that are coming off the street, it's a really long process. And if they even do make it past selection, you're talking about a 2 to 3 year long process just to get to a team to begin with. There's a lot of personal growth that happens during that time, and they will have some times where they fail, and there's a lot of character building in that. Same thing with me. I did make it through my first time, but I did have some failure points. So I just picked myself up and learned from the experience, and then just kept driving on. Not to say that if you have the mentality of, hey, as long as I don't quit, I'm good. That's not true either, but I'm sure we'll get to that later. But, sometimes, our first impressions aren't always the right ones, and I try to give them the benefit of the doubt, especially if they're really dead set on taking this career path.
Yeah, so lately I've had an influx of people going SF in, I think it's Massachusetts. I'm not sure which group that is, but I had this real weird applicant come in to get their fingerprints. And to me, I was like, man, this guy is not going to be a good fit. I'll have to talk to you offline what happened, but I wanted to punch him in the throat. Let's just say that's how disrespectful he was. And the reason why I continued to do his fingerprints is because it was for a National Guard recruiter in Massachusetts. But if he was a regular Army USAREC guy, I'd be like, kick rocks, motherflower.
No doubt. Yeah. If they start out the conversation by outright lying to us, that's not a good look. In that they immediately lose me. I'm sure it is the same with Klaus. It's like, oh, I didn't think that I needed to bring that up. First of all, morality stuff, always bring that up because they will figure it out. Medical stuff, there's a system called Genesis. It's Skynet. It'll find everything. It's like there's no point in lying about it. Like it doesn't matter if you stubbed your toe when you're 2 years old. It'll know about it. You might as well just bring it up, even if you're embarrassed about it, because MEPS and Genesis they're tough systems to get through, and they see all. They are the all-seeing eye, unfortunately. Yeah.
So let me now that you brought up Genesis, one of the questions that's not on the list that I do get asked from time to time: are there some medical conditions that deal with like anxiety, depression, ADD or ADHD? Are those like permanent disqualifying conditions in the past that cannot apply for SF, or is it depend on their history and whatever?
That's a great question. For medical processing, waivers are not tied to MOSs. So the Special Forces contract is not limited by medical conditions per se. What you will find in candidates and speaking to the population out there, when you're bringing up, you got to, number one, be transparent about your medical history. Nobody can help you. Your recruiter, myself, Nick cannot help you unless you're transparent with your medical history when we start processing for enlistment. When you're talking about specific medical conditions, there are timeframes usually associated with the last time you were treated for the condition versus when the National Guard is going to consider a waiver for you for enlistment. The longest waiting period that we have from just like my quick knowledge on that is probably going to be related to anxiety and depression. That's also going to be considered is what other comorbid conditions came with it. So if you were diagnosed with anxiety, you were treated for X amount of time, but you might have had some other issues that came with it. Sometimes self-harm comes up, psychiatric holds, other types of treatment or issues might come into play with that. And they're going to take that into consideration when they're looking at how soon they're going to consider a waiver to be approved as part of that process.
Right.
We already know everybody in today's society has been hit with ADHD diagnosis, right? It's very, very common. That one's the shortest and probably the easiest waiver to get medically. It's a year waiting period to be considered for a waiver for ADD, ADHD. As long as I get everything I need for my applicants and you get Nick what he needs to process you, it's going to be really quick to get you in as long as that threshold.
So if I understood you correctly, aside from the normal recruiting protocols of waiting periods of 12 to 36 months, depending on if it's depression, anxiety, ADD, ADHD, and their mild to minor history, you're saying that it's just a normal medical waiver process and it's not factored into the decision-making process through your leadership or your checklist of eligibility for SF, correct?
That's correct. Yep. Yeah, there's no additional processing with the 18 series medically. The only thing that's going to be required at that point, and this is where our office has to, we've got a really great system down for this. When you process at MEPS and you have a medical waiver, which I think they did the last poll that I saw from the MEPS guidance counselors here in Denver was about 80% of the applicants that are enlisting and getting contracts require a medical waiver. So between usually like 60 to 80%, some type of medical waiver. Your shoulder popped out of place 10 years ago, that's a history of an unstable shoulder, you're going to get a disqualification for it and you're going to get a waiver. It's a really quick one, but it's still a waiver. In order for you to go to an 18 X-ray contract, you have to go to airborne school. If you have a medical waiver with your enlistment, you cannot take an airborne physical at MEPS. And that's a big one. So our office has to process an exception of policy for an airborne physical at time of enlistment. So you're going to get your enlistment contract, but you do not have your airborne physical done, and you have to get an approval to have that happen. And that is only granted by the schoolhouse at Fort Liberty. That'll say, yeah, he's good to go, and you'll get your airborne physical at Fort Moore prior to attending airborne school.
Okay. Thank you for clarifying that, because I've spoken to a couple of active duty recruiters that are obviously more experienced in airborne contracts, because New York definitely does not have any. And I remember him telling me that exactly what you said, that because it's airborne, they can't have any medical waivers. So SF was closed off for that. And with SF being a high stress and job skill or career path, that having anxiety and depression in your past would close that opportunity for you. So I don't know if that's an active duty thing or if it's just Army wide. Maybe that recruiter just didn't want to take the next extra steps per se to get that person in.
I think that's a great call out. I think there's certain cases where, from our experience, applicants might come to our office because other offices have turned them away. They're not able to work certain waivers. They're not ready to work certain waivers. They do something else in the process. It's just what happens. There's also isms, right? We already know. Hey, my buddy told me, buddy told him that I can't enlist as an 18 X-ray because I've got a medical waiver. And he heard that from an active duty recruiter or a National Guard recruiter 10, 15 years ago. Things change, processes change, and it's hard to keep up with those processes. The office that we work out of, that we built here, we try to stay as up to date as we can here on the most current processes, and that is where the experience for our applicants really make a difference, because they know they come in and we're getting some of the most up-to-date information in regards to eligibility of applicants to be able to enlist into an 18 series contract.
Yeah, that definitely clears up a lot of things, so I appreciate that. Last recruiting related question.
Yeah, get this guy off the screen here. Come on.
So with that being said, if somebody's uncertain on whether it's mental or physical or the combination thereof for SF, would you say or recommend that to get their feet wet, that they go infantry first and then explore that option later on when they feel more confident physically and mentally after at least successfully completing OSUT?
I think that's a great question. On the recruiting side, I have two opinions on this. I have an opinion on this, and then I'll share what we were listening to the senior enlisted leader at Bravo Company speak last weekend in regards to feeling ready. When we have certain people that might come into the office and then they're ready to go. They're ready to enlist. I want to go to basic training tomorrow, right? I would have gone yesterday if I could have. You go take the ASVAB, you don't qualify in the ASVAB for an 18 extra contract. And I got a 98. I'm ready to go tomorrow. Well, okay, so maybe what we do then is we send you to 11 Bravo OSUT. We get you your contract to ship out for training. You learn all the great things that come with the small unit tactics. The cornerstone of Special Forces is going to be in the infantry doctrine. So there are things that they will learn in infantry's training that will support and facilitate success in the Special Forces training pipeline. The other benefit of that, if that's the case, even like guys that maybe not old enough to go 18 X-ray. So if I got 18, 19-year-old that comes in, that's the process they want to go. They can't do it because you have to be 20 at the time of shipping to initial active duty training. You go 11 Bravo, at the end of OSUT, they can volunteer now for Ranger School with the National Guard.
That's awesome.
That is a new benefit, and that didn't happen until I think just a couple of years ago with the RTLI, the Ranger Training Leader Initiative. And they can volunteer now to go to Ranger School at the end of OSUT, and they come back as a 11 Bravo qualified Ranger qualified soldier, and they come back and then they can go to SFRE and qualify for that SFAS state. Their confidence is an all-time high. Their abilities, their skill set is exactly what's going to drive them to be successful when it comes time to go to SFRE or SFAS. So the answer for that specific question is it depends. There's the right pathway. On the other side of it, listening to the senior enlisted leader from Bravo Company down at Fort Carson, speaking to a group, we had 55 guys come out for the SOCOM athlete event at Watkins last Saturday. And the biggest thing that I walked away from his speech about, or taking away from that speech, was nobody's ever 100%. You don't walk into SFAS always at 100%. You're never 100% ready for it. And if you can accept that and plan the best you possibly can for it, physically, mentally, and emotionally, you are going to be just as successful as anybody else that goes through that course. But thinking that you're walking in there at 100% and you're going to pass, and it's the only way to do it, you're 100% ready to go, it's just not feasible, and it's not what you should be thinking you're going to be at to walk into SFAS. And that's coming from the senior enlisted leader at Bravo. Train the best you can, prepare yourself best you can, and then just send it. You've got to just send it at some point. You've got to commit to it.
Yeah, it's essentially like having a baby. You can think that you can prepare for it all you want, but when it's go time, it's go time. You just got to rip the Band-Aid off and use all the skills that you've gained, acquired, trained for, and apply it. If not, you're never really ready.
So now moving on to actual Special Forces training. Now, I'm not sure what like SFAS is or SFRE is and all that stuff. I'm not familiar with the acronyms and stuff. But in your opinion, what do you think is the most challenging task or event throughout all SF training? And what tips do you have to help one who finds them in that similar situation to overcome and succeed?
That is a multifaceted question with many answers.
If you could narrow it down to one or two, that'd be fine.
Sure.
I don't want you to be here all night.
Sure. If we're just going to keep it to SFAS and the Q course, So I think the hardest thing for a lot of people up front is SFAS, especially for just 18 X-rays, straight off the street from basic, because it is a completely different environment. Because you go from where your day is planned out down to the minute, and then you show up at SFAS hold, getting ready to go to SFAS, and they use a phrase that they are going to give you enough rope to hang yourself with. And that's where that self-selection kind of comes in, because most people have not, you go from a completely controlled environment to a completely uncontrolled environment, especially in the hold. The cadre give you a time, a place to be, and it's up to you to get yourself there. And then when it's selection, then you go from that freedom aspect to, oh, it's go time. And a lot of people have a hard time just getting through that mentally, because you don't have a cadre at SFAS yelling instructions at you or holding your hand. There's a whiteboard that consistently changes. There's a clock, and you have to take all instructions from the whiteboard. And some people just, for some reason, when the instructions aren't being yelled at you, and you're not holding a drill sergeant's pocket, that freaks people out. And it throws a wrench in a lot of in the systems of a lot of people. Now, SFAS, that's just SFAS. Now there's the Q course. Some people, it's fear, just because you find out a lot of things about yourself during that course. How hungry you can be, how stressed out you can be, and how much physical abuse you can take without obviously breaking any NDAs. And then there's for some people it's language, because it's right after everything, you've gotten your beret. And a lot of guys are just like, yeah, I'm a Green Beret, cool. And then they're like, oh, wait a minute though, you got to learn a language. And I learned Russian, and I've never been more scared about my career than that. Just because it's like, hey, I graduated, but they're like, if you don't know a language, all that work is for nothing. So good luck, I guess.
I had no idea there was a language requirement.
Say that again?
I said I had no idea that there was a language requirement.
Part of the deal. It usually, for the active duty side, there's a language that's kind of aligned with an AO that certain groups handle. That doesn't dictate too much where you end up on the National Guard side. It does open up different opportunities, but for the active duty side, it's imperative across the force, but you have to be proficient in the language to a certain degree in order to pass that course and continue your career. And then it doesn't just stop there. When you're at group, you have to consistently maintain a certain rating in order to be a qualified SF soldier in that realm. But yeah, there's a language requirement at the end of after the Q course is over. So you have selection, the Q course itself, with its varying different courses within, and then at the end you have language. And some people in certain places who get Latin-based languages, it's really great. And then there are people like myself who really wanted to be certain places, and we're like, you're good with Chinese, Russian, Arabic, stuff like that. It just, so it's not over when you get your beret and you're at regimental first formation. It's literally just the beginning.
So how intense is this language training? Like how proficient? Like read, write, and speak fluently, or you just have to be able to understand it and communicate at least written?
It depends. I'm not quite sure about the language side for say the Latin-based languages, but for the Russian, I have to be able to either understand conversation and actually be able to hold conversation, and be able to like read and stuff like that. So it's crazy. Yeah, it's not. It's very. It can be very taxing. You're there for up to 6 months, Monday through Friday. You learn from basic, whatever their version of the ABCs is, all the way up to being able to talk about natural disasters, and being able to tell people about your home and explain how to do certain tasks. Like one of my things in the curriculum was how to run a basic rifle range in Russian. Hi, my name's Sergeant Greco. To this is how this is how you run this is how you run a machine gun. So it can get pretty crazy. So.
It sounds like what group is looking for. So 19th group specifically is asking for French and Spanish as primary languages right now. French and
Spanish. I'm surprised.
There's
a lot of those. Well, I mean, Spanish is so common in the military. Maybe it's just because I'm in New York City and we have a huge population that speaks Spanish. But yeah, all right, cool. I would think that like certain dialects of Chinese and Russian would be the highest in the priority right now with the world current events and stuff.
So the thing is with certain 519, so BECO 519, it really does help if you do know Russian, because they are kind of co-located with 10th Group. And 10th Group, it handles Europe and anti-Russian proliferation. That's kind of our thing. So it does help, but you gotta think where 19th Group generally is on the map and what units it's kind of co-located with, and how they could support those operations. So if you're looking at the world stage too, and making 19th Group operationally compatible with a lot of the goings on in the world. I mean, French, it's everywhere. Same with Spanish. It's not just Latin America. French and Spanish are kind of prolific in a lot of the world theater that we are currently operating in. Yeah. So,
with that too, and just as something I actually got to see going into that was a guy coming into the pipeline, 18 X-ray pipeline. If he has a language he already speaks and is proficient in it, we can even hold exceptions for them to have to attend language school depending on their proficiency.
Right. That was going to be my follow-up question.
Yeah. They'll test out at the end. So yeah, they have to pass at a certain range. I have known fluent speakers to get really aggravated with the testing out, especially if it's the DLTT versus the actual speaking test. What they end up testing out at is a very proper grammatically version of their language. So as long as they make sure that they get the super, I guess, posh version of their language and they have it like cut and dry, they'll be fine. But yeah, there are opportunities to test out. There are target languages. In certain languages, they might require you to learn another one, but it's not common. Usually, they'll test you out if you're a native speaker.
Well, it also saves Army money from having to train you in a new language too.
Yeah.
What would you have done differently when preparing to leave for Special Forces training, and what would you recommend a potential candidate to do to increase their potential to successfully earn their Green Beret? Whether it's learning land nav, like maybe even paying for like some sort of like coaching group to learn land nav and get physically fit, whether it be rucking or something along those lines.
All of the above. again, I kind of tried to figure it out on my own, and for some reason I thought just weightlifting and running was going to be the kind of fix-all for my situation. I showed up and I learned that was not the case. So probably more functional fitness kind of. Obviously, there is a need for being able to lift certain weights, because it's not everything that we do during selection is light. But like being able to making sure that your musculoskeletal and cardiovascular endurance is there. Grip strength is key, and just being able to really push yourself past, being able to get yourself to a point where you know that you can push yourself past what your brain is telling you your limits are. There's a ton of good coaching programs out there by former TVs, but what the Green Beret cadre are looking at over at SFAS, it changes because the requirements change. So just make sure that on top of getting coaching, I know a ton of, I follow a few people on Instagram that have some pretty decent programs, and it's not just physical fitness, but there are some other ones that are just, there's one that teaches land nav stuff or small unit tactics. They're all, we could take her off and talk about it, but there are resources out there as long as you continue to be proactive. And even after you get to group, there's a ton of other resources out there that are readily available to the public that help you to be a better Green Beret after you graduate as well. But leading up to it, just being proactive. Yeah, if you're real with yourself in your prep, you will be as prepared as you can be when you show up. But again, like we said earlier, like having a baby, you can train and overthink it as much as you want, but when your feet hit the ground over there at McCall, it shakes the edge of sketch. You're just, what am I doing here? I don't know what to do with my hands. My legs hurt. I haven't run yet. That type of stuff. People, as soon as they jump out of the vehicle at McCall, people lose their minds. It's just, so all the prep that you do to counter that stress when you get there is what I would suggest doing. Because I did not do that when I showed up, and I learned the hard way quite a few times. But I somehow made it my first go, so it's possible if you just do the right thing.
What are some things or reasons that causes someone to quit or get terminated? And is it true that you can get voted off by your peers at some point?
Yeah. Yes. Okay. Sandbagging. We call it sandbagging, but not putting your full effort into team events. Your peers will know, no matter how sneaky you think you're being. So a non-prior service 18 X-ray is probably your biggest opponent out there. They are your peers. There are team events, but they are always watching. The cadre they're on the stuff. They are watching as well, but your peers are always watching. And then you do these things called your peer reviews or your peers. And yeah, if you're sandbagging, your buddies will know, or your buddies will know, and they will eat you alive for it.
So break that down for me. What's sandbagging? In case someone in the audience doesn't know what that means.
I keep saying military jargon like everybody. Yeah,
so I know what sandbagging means as a recruiter.
That's a different conversation.
Right. Okay. So during what's called log PT, where it is in the name, you're lifting a really heavy log with your friends over your head if you're not lifting your fair share of the weight, or if you're not if you're just standing around during certain team events when apparatus is needing to get built, they'll see it and they'll know it. Like, everybody's rushing to do something, but it's like blatantly obvious that you're not helping out. And everyone's stressed out, and that makes everybody really mad really quick. Your friends will eat you alive for that. That's essentially what sandbagging is. If you're not putting in an equal amount of maximum effort as everyone else is, because again,
to reserve their energy for something in the future potentially.
Right, and it does translate out, because if you're always looking for the easy way out when you're literally in a competition, not only against the other candidates but against other teams, if you're always looking for an easy way out when the stress is really on, then you get to group or the regiment as in a whole. That's not a habit that breaks easy. There's not just one set of tiers either. There are multiple sets of tiers throughout selection. So you're putting forth maximum effort, not only physically but mentally, will do you good, because you will have time during selection to talk about I'm from wherever, or I'm civilian and I do this in the real world. And as soon as that secret's out, they're going to be like, okay, dude, you're not dumb, so why aren't you helping? Or or you have prior experience here. Why didn't you say this when you could have saved us a ton of pain? But again, for prior service applicants, the 18 X-ray mafia is a thing. They are ruthless, and if you're not prudent when you offer suggestions and you don't deliver it prudently or kindly, they will vote you off the island too, because no one cares that you're prior service. No one cares that you're you work as a hedge fund manager or something. They don't care. If you're not helping and you just watched everyone suffer when you had something that may have been an answer, not only will the cadre know, but your peers will know, and it won't end well. I know it's
nobody likes a blue falcon.
Yeah, if you just don't put forth the effort, your friends won't be your friends. That's as simple as I can put it.
Good to know. I hope people are picking up what you're putting down, man, because this is gold. So pay attention, people, because you got to be a team player.
The keys to the castle, because a lot of the stuff that we are kind of talking about are protected by NDAs. So without giving everyone the answers, but if you're looking for answers here, or the T code, you probably rethink your approach to this.
Yeah, so when he says NDAs, those who don't know what that is, that's a non-disclosure agreement, meaning that he cannot share certain things for operation security and just things that is not supposed to be privy or known to the general public.
If you're going into this and thinking that you're not going to sign anything to be hey, keep your mouth shut, I mean, again, you should probably rethink this whole process.
All right. So when you're drilling, do you have normal drill weekends like a Saturday and Sunday, or is it a higher op tempo and you got extended drills? And do you typically drill more away, or do you have 50-50 with home station versus away drills?
Again, that's a multifaceted answer. If you're not getting ready to go on deployment, you're doing kind of an extended drill. They don't always drill every month. Sometimes we'll do a 4-day, one weekend to knock out some administrative stuff, and then you'll be off for a month. And then that next month you're going to go out to the field to do something. And then, your AP can go from 2 months 2 weeks to a month, depending on how they break up drills. That also, again, changes if you guys are about to go out on deployment. It really just it depends on what you're doing on deployment and how your workup is for that.
Right.
And then other times it's like, okay, we're just coming in for drill, guys. Like, we don't have anything, so I have to stare at you guys for 4 days, and you all stink. You know, it's just like stuff like that. So I personally came over from active duty not that long ago, so I'm still really learning the ins and outs of the normal drill schedule, especially for workups. But from everyone I've talked to, because I was interested when I came over. I get the, well, it depends. Are you working up towards a deployment, or are we just kind of sitting here checking a box for, you know, so that I'm no longer red on my dental exam, you know? It's just, it really depends on what things look like, but they're not. And then using that to break into the work-life balance. Again, if it's not a drill that you need to be there for, your team will work with you because they understand that this isn't, for most normal drilling SF dudes, this isn't the only show that they're, you know, tied to. Myself, I have 2 businesses. I'm a dad. I work for another company, and then I do recruiting, and then I'm a cadre over the SWID. So the Special Warfare Training Detachment. My team over at the Special Warfare Training Detachment, they're like, it's really like, hey Nick, we know you're busy. Do you think you'll be able to come in for drill? You know, they know. But if it's something that they have to get done, they might try to twist your arm behind your back, or they'll just be like, okay, cool, like we are doing this weekend. Do you think that you can come in like the week before, the week after to get done, because we have to get it done by a certain date. The communities, I love the community. I love walking outside of the SWID and just being like, man, I work here. This is crazy, right? I did that when I was over at 10th Group. I loved it there. You know, it's just, the community is great. They really do care about you, your personal life, your home life, like making sure that you're really just setting yourself up for success, because the regiment loses if you don't, you know, if your life is crazy, if like they keep getting in your way and stomping on your professional goals on the outside, or like if you're a team sergeant, I'm sure like I really didn't need Ted in. It was his kid's birthday this weekend, and for some reason I bullied him in the. I don't know how that's going to come around and bite me in the butt later. You know, and if you have a more rambunctious crew, I mean, I haven't personally seen it. I do know that people start like standing on top of things, making monkey noises to make the day go by quicker, to get, you know, everyone out.
That's not from personal experience at all.
Give me a random. Hypothetical situation, yeah. Like it's, but again, like these guys aren't just co-workers, right? A lot of these guys end up becoming really good friends, if not family. So they're not going to like works. Regiment's only going to be part of your life for so long. Your family is kind of your family, and your personal aspirations are kind of a forever thing. So they're never gonna face palm your aspirations or your normalcy to bring you in for nothing. Yes, the mission is important. It is foremost in our minds, but we can't accomplish the mission if things are messed up at home. You just can't. So the community is great. I can only really speak for what I've seen here in Colorado, but I assume it's like this everywhere, because I wouldn't expect anything less across the regiment. So that's pretty much. I know that was a really long-winded answer to your somewhat simple question.
No, I think that's awesome, and it's valuable, because people do ask me questions about like, how does that impact family life? If you got other things and aspirations that you're doing outside of the Army, and it sounds like you've got quite a few things going on. Like, you're like the ultimate entrepreneur, if you think about it. 2 businesses, instructor, SF, soldier, right? And yeah, I think that's awesome. So, and you're saying it's like a family vibe, and they take care of you. They're understanding.
Yeah, it's as a new guy coming in, it's really I just gained a bunch of older brothers that are, and if anyone here has older brothers and know how growing up with them are, it's the same type of vibe, honestly. You know, you say or do something silly, they'll never let you live it down, but they won't be mean about it unless it's something really dumb. And then like you make your amends for it, and then everything's cool. But they'll just it doesn't mean that like 2 years down the line somebody won't bring it up and be like, hey, you remember that one time you put that scope on backwards and then stood in front of all those infantry dudes trying to show them how you're the subject matter expert?
Also hypothetical.
That is hypothetical. I've never done that. Not to say that I haven't done something silly in front of someone that I'm supposed to have been a peer or a mentor to. But that's just an example, right? It's just funny because it's just like, because then like as you grow in your career, you're like, oh my God, why did I do that? It's just like, and it just, I just use the typical failings. I just use it as a learning experience, and some not so typical failings. It's just, your family is going to be there to, point out those things so that you can get better and family can get better. Because, you are not the first person to make that mistake. You will not be the last. We are human. And, again, as long as you can, most of the time they're just trying to poke fun at it because, it isn't that big of a deal. You can always come back from it. And, again, it's a learning experience. We're all human. So it's, that's just how it is. And, yeah. And I'm sure we're going to get to the point where we start talking about getting ready for family stuff, kind of circling back to how to prepare.
Yep.
If you don't have an honest conversation with your spouse about what you're about to do, and you don't make your spouse a part of the decision-making process, that'll sink your ship faster than anything else. Because if you don't have that conversation about, hey, there will be some times I literally will disappear for a month and a half or a week or two, and you won't be able to get in contact with me. And you don't get to that point where you guys actually rely on each other. That's just as worse or just as bad, if not worse, than physically or mentally preparing on your end. Because your family has to be bought in that you're doing this not only for yourself, but to better the family structure as well. That you are actually taking care of them, that you do actually care that they're having a hard time, especially if you are what's called a geographical bachelor. Say like your family does not get to follow you to Liberty and stay with you during your 2 to 3 year time in the queue, and they are like getting their own things done back home. That's an even bigger struggle. And if you're not communicating or there, example, I had a guy who was married, geo bachelor. I was going through and queue with, and his video game time was his video game time. He didn't, like when he was home, like he was just there. That did not go over well with his wife, and she let him know about it a lot. And it just, after a while, it does eat on your ability to get through the course and even perform at regiment. Because like if you make, and that's unfortunately the younger crowd always, and not necessarily all the time, but most of the time, you're making it mostly about you, and how you're stressed out, your family's gonna throw a stick in your spokes faster than you could self-select, because it isn't just about you, especially if you're bringing a marriage into this process. So for some people, I would say making sure that you prep your family for your absence, and then you then sign that mental contract with yourself. It's like, hey, sometimes I might miss birthdays, I might miss certain holidays with the family. And then again with them as well, it's just like, as long as like they know at the end of this, especially as a guard soldier, that you are going to have that family time, that time to reconnect. As long as you kind of prepare on that front, you'll be all right.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Too, is like, this guy's married and like he's chill all the time, because I don't have Mrs. Smith calling the 4th Battalion commander being like, where is my husband? He said he was doing this super secret thing and I'm freaking out. Also, don't tell your family that you're going to be doing something crazy during the course that you can't tell them about.
Yeah.
You can say things to your spouse as long as they're not like complaining about it on Facebook, then that's going to come around and bite you. Don't stress your family out. It's not worth it. You're not cool you're not cool when you show up to the regiment either for the first time. So get a successful deployment under your belt, and then you might be cool, or you might not be. This just depends on how you do it. But like, just because you put a hat on doesn't mean that you can then post about it on social media for, IG cred. Depending on where you are in the course or where you're at in regiment, they will find you. And again, you're always being watched, you're always being assessed. Even as a super senior dude, there's always someone judging you, apparently, essentially, not apparently, well, apparently too. But just maintain your humility, maintain your communication, and always assume that you're being assessed, and you'll be all right.
All right, good stuff. All right, so hopefully they're picking up what you're putting down, because that's some pretty important things there, especially with the family.
We'll see. I mean, some guys will still show up to selection and get that 22% interest Mustang from one of those local dealers out by Liberty, and do the same brand new soldier thing. Literally saw a guy do that, marry a stripper, and then do the other big, the big no-no that all new soldiers do. I can't remember what the third big one is, but he did it all.
DUI.
But they're in love.
He got a DUI. Oh yeah, he was killing it. Yeah, it was just like
General's daughter.
Well, that's like a plus point thing, but I think if you're new,
our new soldiers bingo card out. And as long as our soldiers from our office aren't checking those bingo cards off, we're happy. Let the other guys make those mistakes, not our guys.
So over here, at least in the Colorado office, the Special Worker Training Detachment, we try to make regular trips out to Liberty just to check on the guys wherever they're at in their process. And we still, from time to time, just facepalm ourselves because we're like, why are they doing these things? Why? And, it's just young soldiers, it's like a rite of passage. They just can't help it. Well, 22% isn't that bad. It's like,
that's a great deal. I can handle that.
Yeah, but the payments are only $500. It's like, bro, you make E4 pay right now. What are you doing?
Yeah. That's wild. That's funny.
What do you do? So it happens. But anyways.
That's great.
And because it's such a long course, our students, our candidates, our soldiers are going to deal with some of those same issues that the active duty guys deal with because they are in that training pipeline for so long. It has been a goal in this office and having Nick here to help facilitate that. Him being from the SWID, he is in this office is one of our office's full-time connections to 519, and having that mentorship from guys like Nick and the other cadre at the SWIT, and even Bravo Company, when those guys would go down to Fort Liberty, those guys were out there for 2 years on average, right? 2 to 3 years. Guy we just talked to last weekend from the 18 Delta course came back after 3.5 years.
Yep.
3.5 years that he's out there at Fort Liberty, where if you're not checking in on those guys, I mean, they're out there in the ether. They don't exist because they're in training. They're not job qualified. They haven't come back to the company.
Right.
Nick is one of those guys here that's really invested that personal time and energy into that connection for those guys out in the ether that might otherwise just kind of be floating out there in space. We want them to be successful. Nick wants them to be successful. I want them to be successful because we want them to come back to Colorado, be a successful team guy, and share those experiences with what is going to be future generations, and just restart that process. This is a need that's never going to die away. There's always going to be a need for this type of a job to be around and to be taking care of global events in varying capacities. I use the word obsession on Saturday. Sometimes what the word capacity calls for between the two of us calls for a little bit of obsessive processing. But the culture and the mindset of the team is just different than anything else that I think I've seen in the military thus far. So it's very cool to see that commitment.
So moving on to rotations and deployments, how frequent? And typically, like, I understand SF is very special, so it's probably deployments could probably last a few days to a couple weeks, but it's not like a typical National Guard unit where it's 9 to 12 months long, right?
Again, it depends. I'll use my last year in active. There was a 3 to 6 monther, and then there was literally tons of back and forth to Europe for pretty regularly. There was one time we were out there for a week. There was a time we were out there for a month and a half. It really just depends on what the need of the force really is. They generally don't send us out for this overly long duration ones, but again, that is being looked at from the needs of the global war on terror. They try to rotate out the teams so that we don't get burnt out. But again, that was back when there wasn't like a lower manning rate. Again, it's all dependent on needs of the force, how many people we actually have in the force at that given time, and the frequency and duration is kind of based on, again, needs of what the we're looking for. It is basically what
would you say that it depends?
It depends. Again, there isn't. Just as a special forces soldier, you have to be flexible. With the National Guard side, the flexibility kind of goes both ways. The active side, not so much. Like if you're on active, you're going. With the National Guard side, VICO might be going somewhere, but not all their guys can go because of various reasons. There's always someone looking for work. So you can be as busy or as not busy as you kind of choose to be. If you decide to be not busy all the time, they're going to be like, what are you even doing here? Because that will piss people off, especially on your team that are depending on you to be part of everything. Because they don't have a random dude deploying with them all the time. But I do like the guard side better because it's kind of a choose your own adventure game. You can be as busy as you want to be, and that varies from like active or AJR jobs where like what I do or like what Klaus do, or full-time recruiters, or there's ADR jobs within regiment itself. And then you can hop from deployment to deployment. Obviously, they're going to be like, hey, you need to chill out. You need to spend time with your family, or just not be deployed somewhere. Because you may not be honest with yourself right now, but it's you've aged dramatically in the last 12 months. You've been jumping from deployment to deployment, so like maybe calm down. But again, you can really be as busy as you want to be. But again, it really just depends on the needs of how the United States is deploying across the globe and the way that they have to kind of react to new threats on the horizon. So I wish I could be a little bit more specific, but it really is.
It sounds like it depends.
It depends. It really depends. It depends on the needs of whatever's going on.
I know what I'm getting Nick for his Christmas present. I'm going to get him a nice sign here, and it's going to hang outside of the office, and it's just going to say,
it has to be that meme from, what is it, the History Channel of the dude, the alien. It depends. Yeah, so,
you ever see those like movie-sized cutouts of like, you know, the guys in the movie theater in the lobby? And I'm going to have that in order here. It's going to
it's fine, yeah. I mean, it really is. Nick, you can get yourself wrapped around the axle, but again, like, if you're overthinking it now and you're not even part of the force, you're not. You gotta concentrate on the here and now, because it really just being part of any facet of SOCOM, not just being a Green Beret. We can get called for anything from a natural disaster to an active war with a near peer or a peer threat. And we have to be ready at a moment's notice to meet that need. And that's even more so too as a National Guardsman, because we do serve the state on top of the federal government. So it's in the DoD. When I was in the 82nd, I responded to the earthquake in Haiti, but there was also National Guard SF members there supporting our efforts, mainly the 18 Deltas, because for obvious reasons, but there were other things going on that we could respond to that, say, if that the active side can't always respond to. But again, it depends. So it depends. You just have to be ready. You have to be ready. And if you overthink right now, that, oh, hey, this is really going to cause family stress, or I might not be ready, you're going to self-select at some point. So,
gotcha. As a member of the SF community, and it sounds like you have a plethora of experience between active time and in the Guard, what would you say is your most memorable moment, and how do you feel that has shaped or impacted your life, positive or negative?
So memorable moments. So there's a lot of cool stuff that happened on my last. There's a lot of cool things that happened on my last trip to Europe. Got to meet a lot of really interesting people from varying countries in just one trip, and it was a shorter duration trip. But I was a new guy, and I also made some mistakes. And again, it's really shaped the way that I approach this latter half of my career overall. Is that, again, like, you're always being assessed, you're always being watched, and your team depends on you to be ready, or as ready as you can be. And it is possible to let your buddies down, but again, you can't ruminate on your mistakes, no matter how big or small they can or cannot be. You just gotta kind of pick yourself up. And again, the experiences that I had during that time with our partner forces, and they were high level guys. They were great. They're great dudes. And again, like, they know they operate at a high level, but they also know that dudes make mistakes. Not only has it shown me that you're always being assessed. You got to bring your A game as often as you can, but it's also, looking at it now as having that senior time, it's also kind of made me realize that hey, there's going to be new guys, and they're human. You know, they're going to make mistakes. And if you, as a mentor, are not going to then shape them, because I've had great mentors, I've had great teammates, and they helped me they helped me guide myself back into, you know, being a good leader and being a good mentor, or just being a good member of the team. And it's really kind of signaled me away from just like, oh, we always have to be, you know, we always have to be perfect. We have to be this. We're always trying to make ourselves look a certain way in front of not only our leaders but our peers. And it's like, hey, like, you cannot keep these guys alive for their mistakes, because you guys will make mistakes. You know, and it's, to me now, just looking at the way that I was brought up and the people that can help me up from falling over, is that, you know, like, especially being your junior is a direct reflection of what you taught them. This whole mentality in this, I'm sure it's going to be another question here, is this whole like, okay, figure it out. Your new guy will not know. Even if he's an SF dude, he's still a new member of regiment. He doesn't know these things. He or she does not know things when they show up. It is up to you as a leader, as a mentor, as a senior, to help guide that person, because you as a senior, you're going to lead. And if you're looking at the new guy as competition and not a direct reflection of who you are as that mentor, you're wrong, in my personal opinion. And
I agree
then with you. A super high expectation for them, yes, that's there. But then if they fail, like, hey, if it's something that should have been taught to them, that's a direct reflection of what you taught them. If you were just like, here's a book, figure there you go, figure the hell out.
There's a curse word, not an acronym.
Yeah, hey, figure it out. It's like that person, if they fail in front of their peers, because everyone learns a different way, that's on you. And if they fail because of personal shortcomings, or, you know, again, it's just like for you to take them to the side and just be like, all right, you know, first of all, just be like, well, that escalated quickly. All right, dude, how do we fix this? Because you kind of pooped the bed, big dog. So how do we clean ourselves up and remake that bed? And you know, and I had that type of mentorship, and honestly, it's completely invaluable. I also had the other type of mentorship, and it's made me, I've seen what right and what wrong, in my opinion, looks like. And it might not be the same for everybody, but honestly, it has shaped who I am today, the positive and negative reinforcement I've had. You have a certain idea of what I think a leader is, and what the type of standards that I should hold myself to. And honestly, like right now, learning those lessons, and I still have lessons to learn. I still have ways I can develop myself, not only as a soldier, but as a person, as a husband, as a father. And it's just like it's guided me to the place I am now. And I looking at myself now as a Green Beret versus when I first got to the force, and as I was developing through my career, I feel like I've learned and developed a lot, and I've been able to really just, I'm always pushing to better myself as, like I said, as a soldier and in my personal life, because not only on the soldiering side, but with my businesses, everything that I do here as a recruiter, as a Green Beret, just as a soldier in general, directly reflect to those businesses as well. So it's consistently driving me to not only present as a professional on the Green Beret side and represent the regiment when I go out into the wild, essentially, But again, then it's just like, well, okay, well, why are you teaching these things if you can't even handle it on the soldiering side? And then how can you expect to be a leader of grown ass men if you can't even be a good dad or be a good husband? Not saying that's an issue that I've run into, but that's how I look at it. So it's all encompassing one thing. They aren't mutually exclusive. They do directly feed into each other. And if you're not willing to learn, if you're not willing to adapt, you're not willing to change and be accepting of the world around you, you're gonna fail. Being part of the regiment, being your Green Beret, you're always kind of developing. You're not always on the job, but you are always representing not only the Army, the Guard. You're representing your community. You're showing you're an outward-facing reflection of people's perception of group, and that doesn't stop from the first day you raise your right hand to the last time you get that DD-214 or those retirement orders. And even then, like, you're still a representation of your era of that community. So it is imperative to me to always be not only the best person I can be, but the best representation of what a SF soldier is. And if people take that type of mentality into it, and always, learn from their experiences from deployments to going through the schoolhouse and just navigating your personal life in general, you're going to be good. But that's, again, another long-winded answer from my last deployment. I learned a lot, honestly. And it shaped. I had a really great time, and I had a really low time during it, and I use that now as a constant learning for me, developing what right in my mind is, and to be, so I can be a good team.
I appreciate that. Thank you. It was very insightful.
Yeah, insightful, long-winded, tangent even. Yeah. So.
No, it's genuine. I love it. It's the real. I feel like it's the real you, and it's not fluff or like. I feel like it's coming from the heart and from true experience, not from like. Yeah. Tell me what I also appreciate about talking with you this evening is you come off very humble, and I like that. I totally expected a cocky jock kind of guy.
I've been humbled more times than I can openly admit, and honestly, it's a lot of the things came from the course, and then I did get cocky, and I did at one point feel like I made it, and it kind of bit me in the butt, and it took that redirection. Because again, you're always being assessed. You're always adapting and to everything that happens, and it's given me a different perspective. Now we say that we're all the same way, and that is one thing I would change about the force is consistently adding in that humility factor. Because even though some guys do treat like they're always being assessed, some guys don't treat everyone the same way and expect everyone to be just this perfect Green Beret, and we're not. We're human. And, if you don't approach your fellow soldiers that way, not just DBs, but everyone across the force, in ways kind of approach things, because we are teachers. We are always instructors too, on top of just being everything that encompasses a DB. If you don't approach everything as a humble mentor, it's going to degrade everyone's perception of the course, because we are all human. Humans make mistakes.
Yeah, you actually stole the thunder to the next question, which was if there was one thing you could change in the SF community.
Like I'm derailing the questions every time.
No, that's great. No, humility and treating people like human beings. And yeah, I love it. It's awesome.
Yeah.
It sets a tone. It sets a tone in culture. You pick that up very quickly being around these dudes, not just Nick, but I don't know how, and again, I did coming from the event we just did last weekend where Nick's just come off of active duty, and we had cadre involved with 55 members of the public, both service members and non-service members, and the cadre, I think we had about 11 or 12 dudes that were either in the SWID or from a team, and that culture, that mentality, and never having met some of them or just met some of them, it's inherent in that every time you meet one of the Green Berets, that is inherent in how it is ingrained into their culture and how they approach their jobs and their lives. That is cornerstone to what they do. And never having met some of them, but it's just come together, and it's very inherent. That is where they're at, and that is where their mind is constantly growth and humility. It's very cool to see.
Yeah, I feel like you guys go through a lot of character development and through seasons. So you go through your initial basic training experience, you get your gut check at SFAS, and then you go through the qualification course. Then you feel like a badass.
You feel like a badass when you get out of basic, and then they're like, "Okay, dude, we're gonna run over to airborne school," and then you're just like, "I'm no longer a badass," especially when that plane takes a deep bank and you're number one guy, which did happen to me. Because all of a sudden you're in a C-130 and you're like, "Oh, there's the horizon. I don't feel that bad." And then, "Oh, damn, there's the ground." And it's moving really quick. And I just don't know. Like, you don't know. In your mind, it's like, is my parachute going to open? Am I going to mess up my PLF or my parachute landing fall and break all my legs? And then you're just like, you come out of that and you're like, "Yeah, I'm the coolest guy ever." And like, you're in airborne hold waiting to go over to Liberty. You're like, "Cool, I get a maroon beret and I'm just like the coolest guy on both." And sometimes, like, there is that level of kind of, I don't know, I don't want to say jealousy, because there are some people who are like, "Why are you jumping out of a plane?" Every once in a while, I'm like, "Why do I do this to myself?"
I mean, have a perfectly good airplane.
Is $150 extra a month really worth jumping into and it's pretty bad over here, over at Fort Carson, because they can't get rid of those prairie dogs, so they can't plow the fields out here. So you're jumping onto an airfield that's like littered with holes and cactuses or cacti, whatever. Yeah, whatever.
The plural. Yeah. Niche mouse.
Yeah.
Cacti is correct.
Yeah, and you're just like, prairie diggies, is it really worth it? And then afterwards you're like, "Yeah, I love it." Or sometimes you don't. Like, you have a rough landing that's not as rough as others. Like, if you don't end up in a hospital and you're like, mid-30s and you're like, I feel great after hitting the ground," you're either crazy or you're lying to yourself. Yeah, and then like you're at what is it? Benning, not Benning anymore. It's more. You're at more. You're like,
more name changes.
You're hitting your hands with your maroon beret around all the third AD kids, and you have this like air of confidence, and then the dudes with the tambourines walk in, and then you're like, no, you get over to Liberty, and they do, like, there is that like initial talk where it's just like, "Hey, you are," again, it varies when you get there, how the cadre introduce themselves to you, and you are introduced to that, like, "We're going to give you enough rope to hang yourself with," mentality, and then they take you on that first long run, and you're just like, some guys are like, "What am I doing? It's really scary over here." I don't know what to do with all this freedom. That scares me too.
That's a big word that they throw around a lot. You listen to these cadre talk, the word freedom, it's a very personal level concept that these guys are talking about. They're not talking about America, right? They're not talking about patriotism. That's inherent in all these.
Yeah, no, it's like the first time you're reintroduced back to a semi-wild environment without your mom and dad washing your clothes for you for the first time. Or like, I have to manage my own finances now. Even if you've been married prior to going to, you're like managing, you're kind of removed from that marriage environment. You have to then renegotiate how to manage two different types of financials where, like, I'm in this course, I would like to go to the movies, but like, is my wife going to get mad that I then screwed up the finances because I am getting paid as a specialist or whatever over here? And, like, and sometimes and sometimes people, like, you're trapped, you're a young married guy and you're moving from your mom's house directly into an environment that, your wife or, husband may or may not be running the show. And then all of a sudden you're like, I have to be an adult on my own now. I have to be places. I have to be at the right place at the right time in the right uniform. That's the type of freedom some people are just not used to. And before they even get to selection, it's just like, okay, well, I'm going to go. I'm pretty sure she loves me. She spent a lot of time with me in this, business of ill repute, and that means she's totally into me. And I can pay this Mustang off, or no, okay, it's not a Mustang anymore, it's a Challenger. I can pay this Challenger off before I get out of whatever. I'm totally set. And that does trip a lot of dudes up. It's a lot of freedom, but again, that personal development as the course goes on, and you're not surrounded by those dudes that are going to self-select before they even get to selection. You end up growing up with those dudes. You end up developing a lot of yourself, because during those parts of the course, you really find out a lot about yourself. I discovered a lot about my personal stress limits at SEER. That was one of I thought I was getting stressed out during other parts, and they are their own level of stress. But like, I'm hungry now, but I could always be way more hungrier. It's warm right now, but it could always be warm. I could be way more uncomfortable. I could be way more stressed out. It's like that was a really pivotal thing, because I thought I knew where my limits were. But I wouldn't say they gently nudge you beyond those limits to show you that, no, you can deal with a lot more. Trust us.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure they're really good at pushing you beyond your perceived limits.
Yes, they are professionals at doing that. At the moment, the first major interaction with the SEER cadre that isn't instructional, you're just like, this is bad. Yeah, because it's like certain type of garment gets ripped off of your head, and you're just like, and then
I'm in danger.
And then that first negative reinforcement of them adhering their professionalism again, like, you're just like, well, this is happening, and they're just trust the process, and then afterwards you're like, things don't really bug you as much as they used to afterwards, because you're like, it could always be worse. Definitely be worse. So here was
I can only imagine what you go through with SEER training. I've heard some stories, but NDAs.
It's not even the worst one. Like the SF1 is up there. There are other selection processes where it gets way worse. It's bad. Don't get me wrong. I'm not detracting at all from it, because again, they showed me a lot about myself that I didn't know. And while you're navigating that self-realization, they're also applying like moral dilemmas to you. You're just like, you don't even realize that they're mind fucking you the entire time, but it really is. like they're like not so gently managing, like, hey man, remember how bad it got over? And then they sit down with you afterwards, and you kind of talk about certain things, and you're just like, I didn't even realize that was happening to me. They're like, and that's the neat part, you don't, it's like, so yeah, there's that.
I think with that concept, and again, just coming from the background where I'm not, Nick gives me my connection to direct experience in schools and working with the cadre, the SWID, to pick their brains, because this is the same questions that all of our applicants are going to ask. They're asking these questions in their brain, and if they haven't asked it yet, they're going to. It is going to come up. The biggest nugget that I've gathered from these conversations about schools and experiences, because it sucks. There's hard parts because it's designed that way to teach, is you find a purpose in yourself. You find your why. You find why you're going to do this. Why am I going to suffer? Why am I going to go past these boundaries? And every time it sucks, every time it gets to that point where you are miserable, it is a new type of misery. A training misery, right, is to teach you so you can learn. There's a point and a purpose to it. You come back to your purpose. You decide why you're doing it. You decide why you're going to go through with it. And you decide why you're going to graduate and why you're going to go out to a team and make an impact with dudes out on the team, out on real world and on missions. Find a purpose, and it's going to be individual. And there's a reason why we do things. You decide on that individual why, and you come back to that as a soldier, as a candidate, as a family member, as a spouse, a father, a mother. You come back to that purpose, that why, and that is how these guys push past those boundaries, how they make it to that next level through that misery and through that training experience that's designed to break people down and rebuild them back up into something different and better. You come back to that purpose. That is huge, and that is where a lot of success for our candidates out of this office is going to come back to. Why are you going to do this? Why are you going to be successful? And continuing to recycle in that thought process. And hopefully, that's what gets these guys through it. That's what makes them go through SEER and all these other amazing training experiences.
Yeah.
Right? Their individual why, their purpose as to making it through that course. That's huge.
Thank you so much, Nick and Sergeant First Class Klaus. I appreciate you guys coming on today's pod. With that being said, if you guys enjoyed this pod and you want to see more interviews like this, let me know who and what topics you would like me to cover, and I'll see what I can do to squeeze them in the next pod. With that being said, thank you so much for watching. Team Sports signing out. Hell yeah.